showing up and being known to your coworkers as somebody who is knowledgeable about what goes on, who is interested in people's issues and is interested in trying to figure out people's issues.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
How does one become a union steward?
That really depends on your union. Unions handle it really differently. Some unions appoint their shop stewards. So a local officer, a rep, a business agent, what have you, recognizes you and says, okay, that's you now. Some unions hold elections for stewards and even for backup stewards, right? UPS, like was mentioned earlier, there are a lot of positions for alternate stewards, particularly in big workplaces, right? So that it really depends, but generally, if you're a workplace activist and you're interested in getting more involved in the union, showing up and being known to your coworkers as somebody who is knowledgeable about what goes on, who is interested in people's issues and is interested in trying to figure out people's issues is the best step, regardless of the actual structure, the constitutional structure, bylaw structure of how a steward is selected.
Yeah. Jacob, I was going to jump in there on that because that's been my experience in the education realm is, whatever the Constitution and bylaws may say about elections, the reality is that it was whoever was willing to do it, right. Which means very low barriers to entry if you're interested in getting involved. The flip side to it is that sometimes people became, building reps, as they were called in education, by virtue of being willing to hand out a newsletter every now and then, or, something very low level. And they weren't really there to serve in that capacity to address worker issues and be an advocate for workers. But yeah, I would say probably a lot of folks, if you're listening, chances are the barriers to entry are pretty low because there's always a need for more people involved and willing to take on a new role. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage anyone who's listening to find out how do you officially become one in your union. But on a practical level, it may be as simple as find out where to show up or who to tell that you're interested.
Right. Yeah, that is because since steward is the lowest level office, that's going to be the one that is most often undone. They're most often have open positions, and that was all it took. My local appoints stewards, and so basically all assistant vice presidents. Basically all it took is that I showed up to meetings and I expressed an interest in participating in the union. And then they were like, oh, well, you want me to go ahead and appoint you? And I was like, well, I'm still in my probationary period. Maybe we can wait a little bit. But so don't want to put a target on my back while they can get rid of me for literally any reason. But I could have been a steward and assistant vice president as soon as like 3 months into working there. And it's very easy to become a steward.
That's actually a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Jacob, because it's not to say that you can't be a steward or a rep, when you're still very early in a position, in a probationary period or non-tenured period. Certainly you can do that if it's something you're willing to do. But it may be wise to not have all of your stewards be non-tenured or probationary. Just something to consider. I was a rep or steward as a non-tenured teacher and was happy to do that. But I worked with folks who were more seasoned. And so depending on the situation, we could kind of tag in, tag out, depending on where our strengths were.
Right. And so what do you think, Joe, is and you basically run you basically run the stewards program for Labor Notes, right? Can you talk to us about that before we go into more about some tips and tricks to being a good steward?
Yeah, sure. So I certainly can't claim to have started it. The one big resource that Labor Notes has had for the entirety or a big portion of the entirety of its now 43-year existence, is nuts and bolts resources for union activists. Because in many unions, you don't get much support, if any at all, right? Some unions just say, great, you're a steward now. Maybe here's a button if you're lucky. Maybe there's steward training, maybe there's not, right? But in order to be an effective union activist, there's some amount of knowledge that you need to know. So something that we've done for a long time is put out articles that we call Stewards Corners, that are monthly articles in our monthly magazine about both nuts and bolts and more organizing focused kind of resources for stewards, things to help people thinking about that. So those are still there. That's something that we do. We also now put out a series of books by a really great labor attorney named Bob Schwartz, including books like The Legal Rights of Union Stewards, books like that, that are available through Labor Notes, and that have for a long time been just like really the Bibles of stewards' rights. The one that I mentioned, The Legal Rights of Union Stewards, is just like, there's nowhere else that you can find a book like that, really. I think that's as effective as that. More recently, in the last, say, year or so, we've been doing monthly online stewards workshops that are balancing, again, between those kind of nuts and bolts things and the more organizing kind of side, trying to mix them up a little bit. The idea being that really there are very few opportunities for stewards to interact with other stewards in different unions. If you're a steward in the Teamsters, there's not a lot of opportunity structurally within your union work to talk to a building rep, right, from the local teachers union, even in your same city, right? But we believe that there's a lot for these folks to learn from one another. So every month we get together, dozens, sometimes over 100 stewards to learn, talk, discuss about a topic, share their experiences. And for me, it's one of my favorite things that I get to do.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.